guys, I'm Woodcraft Hamster, and today I wanted to show you my EDC Firelighting Kit. Now basically I keep it all in this pouch, which is a sort of small Maxpedition dump pouch, and what I wanted to do was just take you through sort of bit by bit what it is I keep in here, just so you can get an idea of what I take around with me every day for different types of firelighting. What I'll do, I'll bring the camera a little bit closer in, and I'll take you through it step by step. Okay, so this is my pouch. It's got a few different compartments and bits and pieces in there. My plan is that I'll do a separate video on each one of these methods so I can give you a proper demonstration of how each of them work. But to start off with, on the left hand side of my pouch I keep a fire still or a ferrocerium rod, together with a small locking knife. Now I've actually got on here a sort of split keyring, so basically you push it in, the two parts separate, and essentially all you do is, I actually use the back of this knife. This is a Buck Bantam Mini that I've had for several years, and it's got a very, very sharp spine on the back. So basically I can use that to strike the fire still. I don't have to open the blade, and although it's a locking knife, you know, you don't have to worry about putting your thumb or your finger on the blade or catching yourself, although you can do it that way, you know, there's no problem. But I quite like this particular knife because it's got a nice comfortable handle, and as I say, you can use the handle to control the knife without any risk of cutting yourself if you're new to using fire stills or you just want to keep it particularly safe. I actually find this quite good for sort of children who want to learn how to use a fire still. They can hold this, there's no sharp edges that they're going to cut themselves with. So that is my fire still. On the other side of the pouch I actually keep a fire piston. Now this was bought for me by a friend of mine a couple of Christmases ago. It's actually a very simple design. So what you've got a tube and an insert, very similar to a piston you get into in a car or an engine. And what you do, there's a very small dimple in the end of this which you may just be able to see. And what you do, you'll pack that with tinder material in the base of this. Let's see if I can undo this. Just inside here you can see some char cloth. So what you do is you put your char cloth into the dimple, this then gets inserted into the tube, put it onto a hard surface, and you hit this as hard as you can, which forces it in, and the friction that's created and the heat that the friction creates will start your char cloth smouldering. It's not something I use particularly regularly, but it is a nice sort of thing to use every now and again, just a different technique that you can use to light a fire with. Now inside this pouch I've got a few bits and pieces. If I start in the main compartment, so first and foremost, and a lot of people who practice bushcraft tend to look at firelighting techniques of certain types and almost turn their noses up. And you know, there are places and times for fire stills and flint and steel, you know, bow drills, that kind of thing. But actually, for me, I will always keep. Basically, this is a match safe, and inside I've got a few bits of cotton wool just to keep the matches from moving around. And inside here, there's probably about 20 matches. Now these, I'm not sure if you can see this well on the camera. These are strike anywhere style matches. So basically, what you've got. The match safe is just a waterproof container to keep your matches dry, which is obviously very important. And on the outside edge here you can just see this checkered pattern. So what you'll do is you'll strike your match on this. So you know, if you are in the woods and you've got no rough surfaces, no stones or anything like that, you can basically just use the match safe itself. And I find this really, really useful as a backup. On top of that, I also keep one of these, which is just a standard lighter, and to be honest, you know, if you've ever been out practicing bushcraft, especially if you're staying overnight or for a few nights, especially in poor conditions, if you end up taking maybe just a fire still with you or something along those lines, and for one reason or another you just cannot get that fire to light, having either the matches or the lighter I find really useful, mainly just because you can guarantee starting a fire with one of those two. Now that's pretty much it for the actual fire lighting techniques that I keep with me. I mean, there are certain things that I will take if I'm doing something sort of specialist, and it all depends on what it is I want to do. But within the other compartments here, so this is just an old-fashioned 35mm film canister, and these are very good for keeping things waterproof. Now inside this I've got probably about 4 cotton wool balls. Cotton wool balls are absolutely brilliant as tinder for starting a fire, which is why I keep them in my kit. If you take these along with just a small tin of Vaseline you can pick up from any chemist's. Now if you take your cotton wool ball, you smear some Vaseline along the bottom of it, you light it with a fire steel, a lighter, a match, whatever technique you want to use. That cotton wool ball, which would normally burn for maybe a few seconds, possibly a little bit longer, with the petroleum jelly from the Vaseline, it extends that considerably, and it just gives you a much longer initial flame to be able to get your kindling started once it's lit. I also keep a bag of char cloth. Again, this is a really useful thing if you want to make a nest for fire lighting. So rather than having something like the cotton wool which will give you an instant flame, you can take dry grasses, dry bark, mosses, that kind of thing. You can get the char cloth burning, and what it does is it smoulders. You basically have an ember in there. You can then very carefully pack that into your nest. You can close the nest around it, leaving enough air for the fire to actually take, and you can either sort of wave it up and down, or you can blow into it, and the ember will then ignite the rest of the material in that bundle, and then you'll get a flame. And that's something I like to practice sort of on a fairly regular basis, just because it's another way of lighting a fire. And if you're out practicing bushcraft and you don't want to use a lighter every single time, or matches or what have you, it's just different things that you can do to help you light different types of fires. Within here, again, another tinder that I quite like to use. This is fat wood. So this is very resinous wood from pine trees. And I mean, I'm not sure if you can see that, but there's kind of like a glazed surface, and that's the sap that's completely soaked into this wood. And you can take either your knife or even the back of your knife. You can scrape off some shavings of this, get a spark onto it, or an ember onto it, and you can pretty much guarantee having a fire with one of these. That's pretty much it for my kit. The only other thing I do keep in here, and I only have half of it. There's 2 things in here. I'll show you the first one first. These little capsules, little vials, are glycerin. Now, I also have some other vials of these. However, I don't have the vials with me. They're packed away somewhere. I haven't used them for a while. But basically, if you were to take potassium permanganate, which is also a very useful thing to keep in your first aid kit as well, you can put it into water. It's good for sterilisation, for cleaning wounds, that kind of thing. But if you were to put a pile of potassium permanganate onto your tinder bundle, you pour a little bit of this over the top, and what it does, it creates an exothermic reaction. And again, I will do a video on this separately at some point. And what you get is a very high heat, albeit only for a short period, depending on how much you use. But you get a very high heat, and especially if things are slightly damp, or you've got some slightly damp tinder, this is a very good way of getting a very quick fire. And the only other thing that I thought I carry with me regularly, and I wanted to show you this, it's a little bit unorthodox. Now this is a tampon. Now a lot of people give me funny looks when I go out practicing bushcraft and they see me take one of these out of my pack. The reason I carry these, and for the same reason as the cotton wool balls, is this is basically cotton wool that's been moulded into a shape. But what they do is they come in this pre-packaged, so almost vacuum sealed plastic cover, which means I can drop this in a stream, a river, a lake, whatever it might be, and it will stay dry. And the benefit of these is when you take the plastic off, you can pull the tampon apart the same as you would sort of fluffing up a cotton wool ball, and you get a large amount of material for a very small package. And these are absolutely brilliant for lighting fires. You can use this with Vaseline, the same as the cotton wool balls. Alternatively, you can just keep it as it is, and you know, because there's more material there, you get a slightly longer flame. Now I always keep a few of these in my kit, because if for some reason the lid of this is slightly ajar, or I haven't put it on properly and it gets damp, damp cotton wool is not a very good tinder. You know, the petroleum jelly from the Vaseline helps that a little bit, but really you need your tinder to be dry. So I highly recommend, you know, if it's your wife, your girlfriend, whoever, you know, has a couple of these lying around somewhere, grab a couple when they're not looking and stick it into your firelighting kit. The only other thing I suppose really I wanted to show you in here is birch bark. Now, whenever I go out, whether I'm just going out for a hike or a walk, whether I'm going out for a 2-3 day trip or longer, whenever I see a fallen birch, a freshly fallen birch tree, and you've got birch bark on there, I will cut some off, stick it in a pocket or stick it in my bag, let it dry out. I mean, it can be done when it's wet. It's the oils in the birch bark that actually help it ignite, and even when they're dry, the oils are still present. But I find, you know, if you pick some up, leave it indoors for a couple of days, let it sort of dry out so it's not damp and it's not going to, you know, it's not going to ruin your pouch or anything. But birch bark is a wonderful, wonderful firelighting material. You know, if you're out in an area, most of the areas I camp in tend to have an abundance of birch, so I can pick this up on the fly while I'm out there. But to be honest, it's always worth keeping in your firelighting kit. Right guys, so that's what I keep in my firelighting kit. I hope that was useful and has maybe given you some ideas as to some things that maybe you don't already use that might be worth putting in your own kits. As I say, I will make a few videos specifically about the different methods that I use here in a little bit more detail on how they work, how to get a fire started with them. But if there's anything else you want to see, drop me a comment below, and hope to see you soon. Thanks.